before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind.
Again, a unified Europe was a major goal in creating this order.
With few exceptions, the world now stands as one. A year and a half ago, in Germany, I said that our goal was a Europe whole and free. Tonight, Germany is united. Europe has become whole and free. The world can therefore seize this opportunity to fulfill the long-held promise of a new world order. We can find meaning and reward by serving.
Americans, a little glimmer of hope maybe, but my next guest says there's an eerie parallel between today's economic situation, social unrest, geopolitics, with those of the Great Depression. Are we headed for an economic disaster or worse? Joining me now is Trends Research Institute founder Gerald Celente. And Gerald, we were just talking before the segment here. You started your business in 1980. 1980, Jimmy Carter's going out, Ronald Reagan's coming in. It was morning in America, wasn't it?
Well, for a while it was, and then things started to change.
When did they start to change?
I believe they really started to change with the banking system. Again, first of all, I'm a political atheist. I don't believe in anybody's political religion. I see things for what they are, not the way I want them to be.
Right.
So what I have to say has no political agenda behind it. When did things work the best? They worked the best when the Glass-Steagall Act was there.
I agree.
They worked the best before NAFTA. Our standard of living was much higher. Again, it's only the data. So when did it start to change? That's when the change started happening. So when I say look at the parallels, the crash of '29, the Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, World War, the Panic of '08, the Great Recession/Depression. There's a depression going on in Greece, in Portugal, in Spain, in Ireland, in Romania, in Bulgaria, in Hungary. There's depressions going on. We're in a severe recession here. This recovery, it's a paper recovery. Currency wars are already happening. Trade wars are heating up. Oh, and here's that nice one. How about Iran? You want another one? We'll keep it going.
All right, you're talking about Iran. You're talking about the fact that Iran, we are going to have a war. You think we're going to go to war and that it will cover up the financial problems that we have.
Again, run over the parallels again. I'm not talking about war. They're talking about war. I'm going to tell you, I don't want you to have any of those nuclear weapons. And if you do, bombs away, Obama. I'm not making this up. So if they take it, it's the same path. The path is being laid out in front of us. History is repeating itself. Only the names and places have changed.
Tell me about this Iran situation again. So if we go to war with Iran, are you saying that it will cover up the financial problems because of the fact that the war machine will provide jobs, growth in various industries and so forth? Or are you talking about something much bigger?
No, much bigger, much different. Look, 7 of the last recessions, post-World War recessions, were preceded by spikes in oil prices. If we go to war against Iran, we're saying this is the beginning of World War III. You want to talk about a fragile recovery unraveling? That'll do it really nice. These aren't the Iraqis, these aren't the Libyans, these are the Persians. They've been around a real long time. There's 70 million of them, and they're not going anyplace. So what we're saying is if there's war, by the way, war has already been declared. economic war has been declared by the Senate and signed by President Obama on New Year's Eve with the National Defense Authorization Act. The embargo is being put upon Iran. Again, another parallel, but a flip. Remember that in Japan, they cut the Japanese off from resources before World War II? The story they never talk about? Now they're stopping Iran from selling their resources. Oil production in Iran now is down at a
been banking on dollars, but in that world, the US credit rating was top-notch. Now, following a downgrade by Moody's last month, central bankers are starting to think again. Leading the way is China, the globe's largest foreign holder of dollars. Jim O'Neill is director of Goldman Sachs Asset Management.
They've taken the downgrade and the events surrounding it, perhaps most importantly, the fresh, disappointing US economic data, as a further message that they've got to get on and become more dependent on themselves. And I think growing the use of the RMB is part of that.
About 70% of China's $3.2 trillion of foreign exchange reserves are in dollar assets. And new plans to open up the yuan to investors in Hong Kong could start to reduce that. But David Marsh from the official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum says it could all turn into a fight to topple the dollar as the world's reserve currency.
The reason why the Americans have been able to live within beyond their means and run out these very large current account deficits in recent years is because they do have a reserve currency. So you're not going to get them to give that up voluntarily, because there is something about this exorbitant privilege, which is true. They do get a great deal of benefit out of this, and therefore they will only give this up after a real fight. And therefore the Americans do need competition, whether from the yuan or from the euro or from something else. At the moment, they're not really getting it.
But with the euro looking shaky and the dollar in the doldrums, China will be hoping it's the yuan that investors turn to as a new currency of last resort. Rory Villa, Reuters.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, then Russia should be very flattered indeed. That's because China's new aircraft carrier bears a striking resemblance to the old Russian model. Henry Morton reports from Beijing.
It may be more common to accuse China of pirating clothes and DVDs, but now it seems the Chinese are increasingly turning their hand to copying military hardware as well. Analysts now believe Beijing is close to starting work on its own made-in-China aircraft carrier, using the Varyag, a sister ship of the Russian vessel the Admiral Kuznetsov, as a blueprint. However, experts say the Chinese will still find it extremely difficult to build an aircraft carrier of their own.
It is impossible to copy such a complex construction. One could copy the way it appears from the outside, but you need real knowledge to actually get it to work. It would be very difficult to make an identical aircraft carrier. So I don't think this is a case of copying.
This is not the first instance of the Chinese taking advantage of Russian military know-how. Beijing has been making legitimate arms deals with Moscow for years, with the Chinese buying some $2 billion worth of Russian hardware in the last decade or so. But even these have been hit by scandal, with China last year being accused of copying the Russian Su-27 jet fighter. Despite these accusations of hardware piracy in the past, Chinese analysts believe that there will be no need to copy Russian designs in this instance.
Media hype said China is copying a Russian aircraft carrier. I have to say again, we need to gain experience from others in military technology, but we never copy any specific thing from any country. I have seen
tensions are once again mounting against Iran ahead of a crucial report by the UN nuclear watchdog due next week. It's as Israel tests a new ballistic missile and reports that suggest the idea of a military strike on the Islamic Republic is being pushed by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. To discuss the situation, we're now joined live from Buenos Aires by international consultant and author Adrian Salvucci. Good to see you today. We've seen a lot of Western intervention in the region, where certainly this year, when you think of the whole Arab Spring, there's already a lot of military hardware in the area already in place. How possible is it that an attack on Iran is really being considered?
Well, I think we have to be very cautious how we analyze that news. There was a front-page article in the London Daily Mail yesterday saying that the US and the UK were drawing up joint plans to attack Iran. Now, this has been going on for almost more than 4 years now. These permanent threats against Iran on the part of Israel, who are calling for a preemptive strike. That's what Mr. Netanyahu said only 2 days ago. And it all coincides with the debacle of Israeli attack on southern Lebanon in 2006. So I think we have to be very cautious and basically understand that what Iran is the cornerstone of probably what is an ongoing, very tough negotiation to move forward towards a world government where Russia and China are not going to bow in very easily to the Western powers. And Iran is the cornerstone because contrary to Iraq, which was on its own, Saddam Hussein, contrary to Libya and Afghanistan, Iran has definitely a very strong commercial and trade agreement with China, and it has a very strong trade agreement with Russia, and although it's not official, it probably has some sort of military alliance with Russia too. So I think that what we are seeing is we are probably edging closer to what might become a full-fledged war in the region, even a world war, where Iran is the cornerstone if it is attacked by Israeli, American, British, or a combination of all three forces in the near future.
It is very interesting how you bring Russia and China into this, basically describing the massive trade agreements between Iran and China and Russia. Certainly, if the West did try and attack Iran, it would certainly flare tempers in two of the biggest world powers, that of Russia and China. Now, moments ago, you mentioned the issue of Israel. If Israel did unilaterally attack Iran, as we know just a few days ago, it test-fired this new intercontinental missile, do you think America would have to support its closest ally? Would it have to be involved?
America supports Israel unconditionally in the diplomatic, strategic, military, financial spheres. There is a whole line of thought in America from academic Stephen Walt of Harvard University and John Mearsheimer of Chicago University that says that Zionist influence through AIPAC, the American-Israeli Public Affairs Commission, is so strong that it has succeeded in making American foreign policy prioritize the national interest of Israel over the national interest of the United States. Now, the United States is not so much bent on war, public opinion, against Iran, but Israel is. So one can envision that Israel is a wild card. It might unilaterally attack Iran. It will then bear a counterattack, which will be ferocious from Iran against Israel. And then the Western media will plan the whole thing out so that it will drag public opinion from America and Europe to support Israel. And what can happen after that is anybody's guess, because we don't know what Russia will do. We don't know what China will do. We don't even know what Pakistan and India will do.
Now,
and they are
so you bring in the more regional and even a global perspective here. But we saw the American-backed NATO effort in Libya. Just over the past week or so, we've been seeing the reports from a UN nuclear watchdog about Syria and an alleged nuclear plant there that actually for the past 2 decades has been a cotton mill. Now the UN nuclear watchdog talking about a possible strike on Iran. Just what is the geopolitical global agenda here coming from the West?
Well, I think that basically we have a global power elite that is embedded in the United States, embedded in the United Kingdom, and in many countries, but is not part of the United States, Britain, and the European Union. They are bent on world government, and they use the U.S. military prowess to try to achieve that, and NATO's prowess to try to achieve that. Now, what we have seen in Libya is very different from what can happen with Iran, because Gaddafi committed the same mistake that Saddam Hussein is, and that's being alone in the crossfire. But Iran is not Iraq, Iran is not Libya, and things will be very different. And I even believe that perhaps in their desperation, they are looking towards a World War III scenario, because as happened with World War II, it is an opportunity to kick the chessboard and reshuffle all the cards. And I suppose that this global power elite bent on world government will try to reshuffle all the cards in their favor.
Wish we had more time to take this further. Adrian Salvuccia, international consultant.